Hey, everybody, it's Donovan with the Music Retail Podcast. I want to thank you for being here today and for watching today's episode. I think you're going to really enjoy it. You know, my goal with the Music Retail Podcast is to interview people that are interesting, that have something to give and to share, that can help you build a better business. In order to make sure you receive future updates, please like and subscribe. That not only will keep you in the loop for things as they come up, but it also helps the YouTube algorithm to know that people actually like this content and will share it around. Okay, let's get to the interview.
All right, so today we're talking with Beth Houlihan, and Beth is with Kidder Music, and Kidder Music is based in Peoria, Illinois. And we're going to talk about all kinds of stuff, but Kidder Music primarily being a school music dealer, we're going to focus pretty heavily on that, talk about what the last year and a half or so has been like for Kidder Music, and then also some prognostications for what we think the fall is going to be. So, Beth, welcome to the Music Retail Podcast.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Good morning.
So, good morning to you. So, the history of Kidder, I was looking at your website. So basically, your dad started Kidder Music in '74. Is this right? Okay.
Correct.
And he was a music educator, a band director, presumably, and then started. So how did he go from being a band director to starting a music store?
He was an educator for several years and then had an opportunity with Byerly Music, who was the music store in Peoria at the time. They were full line. Downtown Peoria had 5 floors, and he was a road rep. He became a road rep for them and did that for, you will learn I'm very terrible with time. Time travels at a different pace in my mind than it does in reality. I want to say for 7 or 8 years, maybe more, but somewhere in that time frame, pre-me. And they decided this, mid 70s, everything was pianos and organs and get into every shopping mall and do that whole thing, that they wanted to get out of the band instrument business. And so they talked with my dad, and my dad bought their inventory. And the first year we were Byerly School Service.
Gotcha.
And as he learned with that came some challenges that perhaps Byerly hadn't always been really great with their accounts payable. And so he decided, he kept trying to explain that he was a different person and that this was a different company under different ownership, but then decided to rename Kidder Music Service in '74.
Gotcha. Okay. And over the years since then, so that was 46 years ago. So over the years, you've opened and closed additional locations kind of throughout the central Illinois area. And at what point did you get involved? I would imagine you probably grew up in the store and kind of were always somewhat involved, right? But tell me your background and how you ended up getting seriously involved in it.
Well, and I don't know how much is on the website. Let me say my mom has always been involved as well. When my dad bought the business, my mother, who is an English teacher with a Spanish minor, was told that she would need to learn bookkeeping now because she would be doing the books for the business.
Nice.
And so she learned by rote from the Byerly's bookkeeper, how to do bookkeeping, and, very bright, and took some classes over the years. But she still manages our cash and our accounts payable and everything day to day now. So it's truly amazing. They work together the whole time in separate areas of the business, which has certainly led to our success.
Right.
For me, I started grading Conn-Selmer listening tests for my dad at about the age of 7 or 8, which, of course, I thought was fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm grading other kids' papers. But to get, I worked part-time in shipping, the same story that you've heard from many people, I'm sure, but we grew up in the business. We were there. We napped under the desks. But 15, 16, working in the shipping department, working, filing, doing all the grunt work, until finally I got to be on the sales floor a little bit and help some customers, and sort of became a little bit my dad's secretary, did a lot of typing, typed up school bids for him, customer service agreements, things like that, until I was really allowed to start helping people, real live people.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And so you did that through school. Did you go to? Did you go to college? Tell me about like the adult involvement.
Yeah. I went to Bradley. I went to ISU because I went to a very small high school. Gotcha. So what you want to do is you want to go to a huge university, right? And so I went to ISU and absolutely hated it, hated everything about it. I hated everything about it. The music classes, even my music classes were huge. And then your gen eds have 200-300 people in it, and it's just totally overwhelming. Ended up withdrawing within the amount of time where you could get a full refund. So after my parents moved me there, within 15 days, they moved me back. They were thrilled. Gosh. They were thrilled. But, went to the community college, enrolled in a 12-week there, did some gen eds there for a couple of years, and then transferred to Bradley into the music business program and finished out there. Did my internship with our friends at Hyde Music.
Nice.
Many, many years ago. And for some reason, they didn't think my time here qualified.
I get the desire to do that. What was that experience like working with Hyde? And I ask because I'm in this exact situation now with my oldest son. So my oldest son's 19. He just finished his freshman year of university, basically did the same thing you did, but for a slightly different reason. Went to Missouri State, second largest university in the state. Didn't have a great first semester, primarily because they went from seated in person to remote to then not even remote, just like, well, here's some videos, watch this, teach yourself, and then there'll be a test. And turns out he's not able to teach himself college level classes or not interested enough to teach himself college level classes. So he moved back home and went to the community college here in town. But our plan for him, he's getting a degree just in sort of a general business degree. At least right now, that's kind of the plan. We'll figure out exactly what it's going to be as he gets further along. But our plan is for him to go intern with another store away from here. So I'm really interested to hear, what was your experience like with Hyde?
It was really great. I mean, we've known them for a very long time. So, I had a place to stay. I had, it was very comfortable. I learned a lot. They're a full line store, which we aren't. So it gave me the opportunity to learn about combo and, acoustic pianos, how terrifying are they, and learn some different parts of the business. And, I shared a few things that we do, that they took from us. And so, it was beneficial.
So were there things there that you were able to bring back and use at Kidder? And did you basically have pick up things that you wouldn't have learned otherwise if you would have not done that internship?
Certainly the combo side, for sure. I mean, we were never going to be in acoustic pianos.
Right.
And right. So perhaps that would be the only area that maybe wasn't applicable. But everything else, writing with their road staff and they call on Indian reservations. But yeah, talking to their employees and how they do things. Once again, I mean, this is in a very different time. This would have been early 90s. And so things weren't, you didn't have the online side of the business or, sure. That kind of thing. So it was primarily in store. And, you're spending a week or two in each department and right. learning a lot of different things. So
how long was that internship process? How long were you there?
6-8 weeks, long in there.
Okay. So it's kind of brief.
Yeah.
Kind of brief. Okay. Gotcha. And then, so you come back to Peoria. Were you working out of the Peoria store at that point?
Yes.
Okay. And so what's your kind of first roles back then? So we're early 90s, finished college, internship. What were you first kind of doing?
And once again, sort of, we've always been a pretty small business. Everybody multitasks. So, to this sort of whatever needs to be done. But, I was still assisting my father quite a bit, learning not about buying necessarily, but about bidding, and learning some of the numbers on mom's side, and then managing, not managing, but overseeing our Sterling location eventually, and making a trip there once a week. Um, but anything and everything that needed to be done, primarily working the counter, working with customers. That's where you get the most variety, the most experience initially,
Sure.
and then moving into some other areas as we move along. But I visited the other stores once a week, um, and oversaw their weekly financials and sales reports, etc. Made sure that things were going as they should be.
Right.
Which is a difficult thing when you're only there once a week.
Sure.
And something that we haven't always been great at, certainly.
Yeah, that's a hard thing to do. Managing remote locations and staying on top of those things, building cultures, that's like a whole separate skill set. That's a
especially if you don't transplant someone from the home office, which we didn't do in Sterling or in Galesburg. I mean, you can bring people over and have them hang out here for a couple of weeks and do some training, but it's not the same as taking someone from the inside who understands the culture and the kidder way, so to speak, and moving them to another location to oversee that.
Yeah. So then over the last 10 to 20 years, I believe that your parents have kind of taken a step back and have more or less retired, I guess, or no? Are they still involved in the day-to-day?
Dad is still a consultant. We got a new computer system in 2008, and I want to say that's right. And so he did not want to learn the new computer system. And so he started to back away from, that's when I started creating purchase orders and doing more of the instrument buying and that kind of thing.
Gotcha.
But obviously he's still a very important consultant. Mom is still here in the office every day.
Really?
Now, maybe not all day. Maybe it's more of a 10 to 4 type. She works her own hours.
Right.
But they go to Florida. They didn't, the last years, but for 6 weeks, 7 weeks in the winter. But other than that, yeah, she's here every day. So
that's cool. That's
fantastic.
Cool. What's it like working with your parents?
It's great. It's great. Certainly during quarantine, there's so many stories of people who aren't able to see their families, and I still get to see mine even if it was here with masks on, very fortunate that way. Obviously there have been pushes and pulls and struggles over the years, and differences. I was trying to think of this the other day. I went to a NAMM show, and I want to say it was Summer NAMM. It might have been Winter NAMM. I don't know. But I met with the Yamaha keyboard. We've never carried keyboards or digital pianos. And I met with them, and I placed an order. And I came back and told Dad that I just ordered, $5,000 in keyboards and digital pianos or something. I don't know, and
right.
Thought going crazy. We aren't an electronics business, everything. And it turned out okay. It turned out okay. But that was one of sort of the first things that I went out and did on my own, so to speak, that he wasn't aware of. But they've always been super supportive, and my brother is a lawyer. Mom's side of the family are sort of lawyers and judges, and so he has those genes, and hasn't been interested in the business at all. So that leaves me.
Yeah. So then, what does your day-to-day look like today?
A lot the same. I still work the floor. I'm a terrible planner. I'm an organized person, but I hate thinking about long-term planning. It's one of my weaknesses, certainly, and one of my worst, one of my biggest battles, I guess you'd say. I don't have the foresight. I don't, Um, and so I struggle with that. But operations, looking at operations, looking at training, trying to improve training, trying to improve the customer experience all the time. But yeah, I buy the serial numbered items. I have one of my managers that buys accessories. I got somebody in print music that does the print music buying. We are still large in print, one of the few. And so yeah, looking at master orders, looking at inventory, and of course looking at numbers.
And you're down to a single location today. I mentioned you did 3 at one point. The latest one you closed was last year during the pandemic, and you basically just decided to not renew your lease out of concern of kind of what the future holds.
Yeah, there wasn't going to be band and orchestra in Bloomington Normal, and our lease was up, and that's for a school music dealer. That's what pays the lease.
Yeah, and just makes sense.
Pays for the employees. It just not knowing how long it was going to last. You sort of have. I don't want to say conservatively protect the mothership, but we had 2.5 employees there. Obviously, it's one of the worst things you ever have to do is close a location. But for the company as a whole, I thought it was a prudent decision at the time not to renew the lease.
When did you close the Sterling location?
Now you're asking me about years and things. Probably I'm going to say
2015.
And that's going to be low.
2015.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. I just remembered that I had saw that on the website's so funny because of course, before we do this, I try to go to the About Us section, get a sense of kind of what's going on. And
that needs to be updated.
It does, because it's so funny because I'm sitting there reading I didn't realize they had more locations. I thought they just had the one, and it's telling you, our newest location, it's in Sterling and it moved. I didn't know that. And then a paragraph later, it's well, that store's closed. And I'm oh, why am I hearing so much about this store?
Yeah, that really needs to be updated. That's another thing we're working on. We have a new we've changed web providers and companies, and that has been an experience.
And you're nowhere on here. You're not.
No.
Yeah. I mean, it's you. I mean, yeah.
I don't exist. No.
Yeah. So how long have you known that your parents aren't proud of you? No, I'm just kidding.
It started early. Matt was always the smart one, going to law school and all.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Sorry, I got sidetracked with that and I forgot what I was going to ask next.
The Sterling store was more of a combo store. It was primarily a combo store. So that was
one started, I think, because you bought another store and then moved it and changed the name. And
it was awful. They had smoked in there for 50 years. And so we basically threw everything away. And I wasn't involved in the hiring. That I was still in school when that was going on. And so I wasn't involved in hiring of the personnel or anything, but just due to the personnel and the way the store morphed. I mean, certainly we did instrument rentals out of there, but the staff, we never found a real, school music focused person to have in that store. It sort of had the combo vibe from the get-go.
Yeah.
And, we did a lot of great clinics. We had a lot of fun, once again, I'm young and hanging out with Todd Zuckerman or, Wolf Marshall clinics. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. And it was a good store, and it was the expenses there were very low. The rent was very low. All of that kind of, it was a very, very inexpensive store to run. Things started to change. The area, a couple factories shut down in the town, and things started to change. People are looking for a lot of used gear. People are, trading amongst themselves, that kind of thing. And so sales started to slip a bit. But more so than that, even our landlord was Sears. We were in the Sears Plaza. Well, then Sears closes. And there's us and a nail salon that are left, and they aren't taking care of anything. And so I looked at a few other places, looked at some other shopping centers, much higher rent per capita, and it just, at that time, sales weren't going to support a move.
Yeah. Well, and that was the next thing.
To a location where we needed to be,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and so the location that remains, the one in Peoria, is also, you're kind of following a model that some of the other stores in our industry have done, like Page's Music and others, where you're not in like the big retail corridor. You're actually in more of like an industrial kind of area. You're off the beaten path, and you're definitely a destination location. One of those places that's essentially like a warehouse with a kind of a front office retail that's just set up for people that know about Kidder Music, that are rental customers or have been recommended from directors to come in. So it's a different kind of experience than like a normal, quote unquote normal music store.
Strip mall type location, yeah.
Yeah. And the rent probably in that location is much, much, much cheaper.
We own our buildings.
Oh, so. Nice. So then it's not. So it's much more expensive.
Well, we just bought the building behind us. Actually, we were renting half of it for 5 or 6 years for our studio operation. And finally it became available for purchase. And so we remodeled the other half, spent $100,000, remodeling, and building it out and making it really fabulous, which was done in March, of last year, when we couldn't use it at all.
Right. You had to feel great about that.
So yeah, that was fantastic. But yeah, it's going to be great.
We went through the same thing with our store in Kansas City, and we had relocated it and renovated the inside of the new space, did all the infill, got moved in February, and then it closed for 2 months and started it for March and April. And it was a very auspicious kind of beginning. We were concerned about like, oh God, we had a 10-year lease in this new building. I'm like, oh my gosh, what have we done? But fortunately, we've been able to reopen, and things have gone on, and it's been okay. But
we still have a lot of people, or a decent amount of people, doing Zoom lessons. But there are more and more that are coming back to in person.
Yeah.
So we look forward to having those additional rooms filled up.
I'm having the same issue in my store in Kansas City that you've had with the store that you had in Sterling, and the fact that it's primarily a combo store, and all of our other stores are full line stores, not with acoustic pianos. But this is the one store that I can't get traction with school music, and I need it, because that's an important component for our profitability and customer acquisition for all of our stores. And all of our other stores do a robust business with school music, and the one in Kansas City doesn't, and the numbers show it. And so we actually are in a transition right now with that store, where our store manager recently had their first baby. He's going to be kind of moving on to other things. And he was kind enough to kind of let us know, like, hey, just so you know, over the summer, I'm going to start looking for another opportunity. I really, it's all amicable, but like just kind of time. And so as I look for his replacement, I'm thinking, boy, it'd be great to get someone with that school music background that can finally help me grow that side of the business, because the Kansas City area is such a wonderful area for school music, and we're just not even scratching the surface of, we're doing some rentals there, but a very minuscule amount. So,
and that's how it sort of always was there. Our road operation covered that. And so everybody just still dealt school music wise with their road rep. And, if they needed a box of reeds, it was convenient, or to drop a repair off there so that I could pick it up, or what, it was a convenient pickup drop off point, but it wasn't ever, the teachers didn't go in there and hang out and have a cup of coffee, or,
right.
It wasn't, it never had that type of support.
Yeah. Well, hopefully next time I see you, which, by the way, are you going to NASMD and NAMM?
I'm since the restrictions have been lifted more, I'm feeling better. I'm feeling better about it. I was probably only about 30%. I mean, I have my hotel room and everything, and I'm probably 60 to 70% yes now. I'm planning on it. I'm planning on it. I won't be there. I'm probably going to drive down Monday and drive out Thursday afternoon. Maybe hit the show for a couple hours in the morning and then drive back.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, hopefully when I see you then over the summer, I can tell you that I've got a great band person for my store.
I hope so.
My fingers are crossed. So let's talk a little bit about how the pandemic has affected your business over the last year and what things you guys did to mitigate that. So I'm going to guess that both your lesson programs and rental programs took a huge hit.
Yeah, we set record numbers, not in the way that you want.
That's the attitude right there.
You know, it was interesting because, I mean, we were closed in March and April for the most part, which gave us the opportunity to cross train once we were able to, even if we weren't able to be open, but able to have some staff, you know, pairing staff that could do multiple things together, having different pairs that could be in here to, you know, I can do shipping, receiving, and I can do music, and I can answer the phones. During shutdown, all of the calls that came to the store were forwarded to my cell phone. So that was fun for my husband to be part of my daily work life. But I really thought that we were going to rent no horns. I mean, that was, I really thought we wouldn't rent any horns, or that the possibility was there. And of course, the stock orders have been placed and received. So the inventory is here. And we did rent horns. We have enough rural communities with small programs that we're still able to do band in some way, shape, or form. There were some that also did remote learning, and we'll see how successful that is as school comes to a close. But we rented about half of what we normally would. What I did not anticipate was the amount of returns that we would receive from kids that had rented the year before, that didn't want to do remote band and didn't want to be in band or orchestra if they couldn't do it with their friends.
Right.
And so the returns at the start of the school year just poured in for the kids that didn't want to do band and orchestra. So in addition to only getting rid of some of the inventory that I had purchased, all of the inventory from the year before is coming back as well. It was, you know, once again, record numbers, not the kind you want. So it was a struggle. But luckily, my mother has always managed cash very well, managed our finances very well. So we were, you know, we got the funding, we got the payroll protection, and we were able to keep everybody employed, with the exception of obviously the Bloomington store. But everybody here was still employed and still is. So we've hired a few new people now, but you know, sheet music, you know, no IMEA, no festivals, no contests, sheet music, just all tanked to almost non-existence.
Yeah.
You know, with no MEA, no district festivals, none of that. No private lessons really happening. No piano lessons in our facility or from our piano teachers that regularly shop here, you know.
Right.
Everything. We don't have a huge online presence. That's not we do some stuff on Reverb, but our website is built to support school music and support rentals.
Right.
And, you know, ukuleles and that kind of stuff will be up on Reverb, or, you know, but that is not, and that's still, we did not rebuild. We were in part of a rebuild and we switched companies, and that was that's a whole nother story, but still in process.
Right. So you were able to kind of get through it. You know, I would imagine you're reducing expenses where you can, so on and so forth. Were you able to get through this period without incurring a lot of new debt?
Yes.
Awesome.
And so that's really, yeah, I mean, our road staff obviously wasn't going out. So, no gas expense there, no travel expenses to any conventions or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Really, literally payroll and keeping the lights on, which, for part of that time the lights weren't on. So
Right. That was our big goal too, was not just to survive it, but to survive it without like a bunch of new debt, because we didn't want to like come through this thing and then like have this huge hole that we had to dig ourselves out of. And so we managed that pretty well. We were fortunate because we're also, in combo that, the retail side went gangbusters last year, which was unexpected, but much appreciated. And it helped to offset the declines in the rental and lesson program. Of course, the problem with the rental program is that, we've really mostly felt the effects of that all this year, because last year was just the last few months of the year. And this fall, remains to be seen how it's going to be. But whatever benefits we see from this fall won't really impact us much this year. Although we are seeing, my shop manager just told me we're going to have a record year for school repair this year, which I think last year was also a record year. So to beat that is impressive. So we're looking for all those little ways to help this year be more profitable, because we actually feel like this year is going to be more of a challenge than last year. So.
Yeah, I'm really hopeful for this year rental wise. Now, I don't. It's a little bit of a crapshoot every year. How many trumpets are you going to rent? How many clarinets are you? Is it going to be a saxophone year? It's a little bit of a guessing game anyway. But to know who's going to start two classes and what the comfort level is going to be from parents, financially, did a parent lose a job? Are we going to rent twice as many? Are we going to get the ones that quit last year back? Are they going to be able to re-recruit those? Have directors bring those back into the fold? All unknown, all unknowns. And so I'm really optimistic. I mean, people are craving culture in any way, shape, or form. And so I'm really, really hopeful for a great year. Now, it's interesting that you said about repairs, because for us so far, the schools are really, really hurting financially here, even with the ESSER funds, even with, there weren't any fundraisers, there weren't any, carnivals, auctions, all of that kind of stuff that they do, marching band competitions, which is a huge fundraiser for the school music programs. But most of our schools, there are some that are still doing the repairs, but many of them didn't use their school instruments for 3/4 of the year. Mm-hmm. And so they are not going to send them in for summer repair like they normally would, unless it's not going to be used by the same student next year. So those that are graduating 8th grade or graduating high school, those horns, they're going to send in for repair.
Right.
But the rest of them, if they're going to be used by the same student the following year, they aren't going to, because they weren't used the majority of this year. So our repairs so far have been down.
Interesting.
And it's purely financial.
Yeah. Well, I guess we're fortunate in that regard. Our schools have had the funding to do it and are sending it in. And I think they're wanting to be cautious and have the instruments all cleaned. And a lot of it's COVID related.
Sure.
And so they're handling that. We've actually, what was interesting to me is we've actually picked up repair from schools we don't normally service. So we have schools that are normally serviced by a competitor, but they're sending the repair to us, which
we have a few of those.
When that happened, I asked our shop manager, like, why? Like, what's going on there? Like, why are we doing their repair? And he's like, I don't know. I didn't ask. Like, well, I would have asked. Like, like I'd want to know, like, what's going on, but yeah, so we're fortunate for that. So you're like me, you're pretty optimistic for the fall. Did that influence your buying at all? Like, because I've told my staff, like, I wouldn't be surprised if this fall ends up being a record high year for us for rentals. And they are immediately like, whoa, well then should we order more? How much more should we order? I was like, don't order anymore. Just like order like we'd already planned on. But I'm just telling you, I think it's going to be. So, maybe know who's got what in stock in case we need it, because I don't want to like bet on it, but I just think it's going to be that way. So how about you? Did it affect your purchasing at all for this fall?
It did, but I used the same formula that I always use. And so I actually bought less because, or I've actually pre-ordered less, I should say, because we've got a warehouse full of horns.
Sure.
I'm going to see what returns look like in the next few weeks as schools end. And I will probably place a few more orders to be scheduled for September delivery, and then I'll cancel them if I don't need them. That's typically sort of my modus operandi. I'll schedule deliveries for September 1st or something, and I'll alter them as needed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think we've taken delivery of most of all of our stuff at this point. But like I said, we weren't optimistic with the ordering yet. But certainly, if we repeat last year's numbers, then we will have over ordered.
Right.
But I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to be at 2019 numbers or above. And certainly, if that's the case, we're going to be in great shape.
I hope that for all of us and for the kids, I mean,
absolutely.
That's what we're doing it. We were able to have our first in-store step up event May 1st. And, it was small. It wasn't, we had 4 people make appointments and had a couple more walk in. But it was so wonderful to have people in the store and kids playing horns and being excited about marching band season, and parents that are excited and helping their kids along. It was just, it was just good for the heart. It was good for the heart.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome.
Finally being able to do what we do, doing some spring recruitment meetings. I went out to a couple schools, it's being able to do what we do finally after 15 months.
Yeah. So during this past school year, how involved were your road reps with their accounts? Like were they able to do their weekly routes this last school year, or were they just kind of going out as needed? If a director needed something, they're meeting them in the parking lot or whatever. How was that working?
Yeah, the latter, keeping in contact, but many of the schools were shut down, and certainly even if they weren't shut down, they weren't having bands, so you don't need anything. You aren't sending repairs in. Yeah. You don't need supplies.
So with those reps, did they serve other roles in your company then, or did they just?
No, they twiddled their thumbs a lot, and it was difficult. In fact, one of our reps decided to take a different opportunity, and that was really tough. He'd been here 30 years, and decided the last few years he was going to go to truck driving school. And trucking right now is big business and lots of money. Yeah. And he felt in a lot of ways, he's got 5 or 6 years left of earning potential, as he called it. Mm-hmm. And he didn't feel like he was able to do his job. He wasn't able to see his people, help his people, wasn't benefiting Kidder music. He's always been a huge Kidder supporter, and it was hard on him personally, I mean, not only financially, but just emotionally, not being able to work essentially. Yeah.
So did their pay change because they weren't working? How did you handle that? Were they
commission, obviously? I mean, their salary, nobody's salary changed.
Gotcha. But their salary plus commission.
The commission opportunities
were not there. Yeah, gotcha. All right, so shift gears here a little bit. So thinking about our industry, what are some of your favorite things about our industry? What do you think is right with our industry?
The people, fantastic people, lifelong friends, associates, the purpose behind our industry, what we do. I mean, I think retail in general, probably what I always like, you never know what's going to happen on any given day. Somebody could bring in a old instrument that you've never seen. Somebody could bring in something totally off the wall, a harp or, something that we, don't ever see. We're in Peoria. It's, there's no greater variety. A professional that's here touring with a musical coming in and playing some horns or, whatever it may be, the people talking to the people, and getting kids started in music. I mean, that's what's great about our industry, I think.
Mm-hmm. Last night I was practicing. And so to set the story up, so my wife and I were super hosts for Airbnb. And we have a guest suite in our home that's almost like a little studio apartment, basically. And we've been Airbnb superhosts for 3 years or whatever. It's been a great experience, and actually pays for the home that we live in, renting out that one guest suite. So we getting this very nice house paid for by Airbnb, which is great. But my music room is right above where this guest apartment is at. And so I always practice, and when we have guests, I'll message them just to make sure that they don't mind. But always they love it. And right now I'm gearing up to the Missouri Jazz Orchestra is going to start back up again, and I play in that. So I've got all the charts scanned, and I have the original recordings going on a little PA system, and I'm just playing trumpet along with that. And guests just love hearing that, they love hearing, and it's practice. And so sometimes I tell them, like, okay, so like I'm going to actually like practice. And this is like watching sausage get made. Like, it's not, when you're like practicing, it's not great. But then I usually try to end my practice by playing some music and stuff like that. And here lately, because I'm getting ready for Mojo, I'm just almost exclusively playing to tracks and stuff. And they just love getting to hear all this great jazz and big band music, and then hearing someone play along with it. And so many people are just enthralled by it. And of course, we've heard this message from NAMM over the years. Joe Lamont's, been beating this drum forever about like the masses of people that wish they had either kept with it or learned to play an instrument. And that's just such a great thing that what we do helps to facilitate that.
Yes.
It's something that just makes it so neat and exciting and almost universal. When people hear what I do, they're like, oh, wow, that's really neat. Whereas I don't know that people who sell life insurance get that same response. So
they certainly don't from me, but that's definitely not exciting.
Yeah.
But yeah, exactly. I think, and families, especially in school music, we sold one of the Yamaha digital saxes a 3 weeks ago to a family. I introduced myself, and he told me his last name, and his last name was Rutherford. And I was like, you guys have been customers for years. He said, yeah, my mama came in. My grandma would rent our horns because we couldn't afford it. And, I said, I remember your grandma coming in, and great lady. But that's, the generational facet of our particular business. I really enjoy.
Yeah, that's really cool. Our store down in Joplin, Missouri, Ernie Williamson Music, has been there since 1935. Different locations, obviously different ownership now. We bought it from Ernie's daughter, but there's people that still come in that their grandparents and great grandparents shopped at Ernie Williamson Music, and like that's just cool. Every time you hear those stories, like it's really fascinating. And Springfield Music started in '61, so we will hear those stories even about Springfield music. And our store in St. Louis is Fazio's Music, which started in '78. And that's long enough too where you're starting to hear about that. Like I remember I bought my first guitar from Mike Fazio. He just opened his shop, and I bought it in 1981, and it was a Fender. Of course, then you got to hear the whole story of how they got it. Well, I wish I still had that guitar today. You're like, oh yeah, here we go. So
bring instruments in for repair that are going to be used by their grandchildren or something, and it's got their original Kidder contract that was filled out by my dad in 1981 or
cool.
something.
That's cool. That's great. All right, so that's the things we love. What's wrong with our industry? What could be better?
I don't like those questions. Obviously, one aspect that is improving is, as a female in this industry, not a lot of us, but that is improving. And so I appreciate the fact that more female leadership is taking hold in our industry. We'll say it was a pretty big boys club for a long time, still is, but that's changing. And I think the attitudes about it are changing slowly. And so that's nice to see. Parts standardization in the band instrument industry has always been sort of a pet peeve. From print music standpoint, put a barcode, invest in a barcoding machine. Some of the smaller companies, the fact that we're printing barcodes for some of these folks. But those are little itty bitty things. We have a great industry.
We really do. You mentioned the involvement of women, and it got me thinking, not from any intentional purpose on my part, and I don't have like a count to know for sure, but I feel like nearly half the people I've interviewed for the podcast, which I don't know the number of the episodes, but I think I'm over 40 episodes at this point, but roughly half have to be women that are owners or leaders of their company. And I don't know if I was raised by my mother and my sister, so I don't know if I just sort of see women in these roles and I'm comfortable with it, and I just sort of it's not a thing to me necessarily, or if I feel like there's just also a lot more women involved than there's ever been before, and they're more visible. Maybe that's the better way to put it. They're more and more visible roles than they've ever been before.
I would agree with the latter. Yes. I think women have always been involved, but many times, in the back office.
Yeah.
Not being out front in the face of the business.
Yeah. And some of the, when I think of, again, I look at this list of women that are here, or when I think of women leaders in our industry, some of those women are people that enjoy being out front and being in the limelight. A lot of them don't admit it, but it's clear that they do.
I'd probably be one of those.
And they're very good at it. And then there's others that do it sort of begrudgingly, reluctantly. They're very shy about it. They don't necessarily enjoy the public side of it, but they're excellent at what they do. And but yeah, it's certainly been a great thing to see more and more of them kind of coming to the forefront of being recognized for what they're contributing and doing. So.
Well, and taking leadership on boards, and whether it be NAM or NASMD but leadership roles in the industry, not just in their business.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So over the next year, we think that rental's going to come back. We think in-person lessons are going to continue to resume. Hopefully we find that pandemic effects from the health side of the pandemic go away. We don't know what's going to happen with all of the financial side of the pandemic. That's something long-term I'm kind of concerned about, the amount of money that has been borrowed to kind of get us through that. So, but I'm pretty optimistic, and I think it's fair to say we both are for the next year. What do you think the next 3 years? And I know you mentioned you don't have this love for long range planning, but just not like a plan, but a gut feel for the next 3 years for Kidder Music.
Once again, I'm an eternal optimist, so I'm always going to say that I feel really good about it until something crashes down on my head. Right. I am optimistic, especially I think because we have been culture starved and kids opportunity starved. I think that's going to benefit us, especially these next few years, providing. My concern in talking to the manufacturers as far as getting product here, not so much on the BI side as far as delivery goes, although that has been slow in some cases as well. And I know, combo, it's just, I'm waiting for stuff for months too, but the costs that they're incurring, when that's going to get passed down, the fact that they can't get container ships, that they have containers full of inventory that they can't get on a ship.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they start building here. Great opportunity to start building in America, but especially if you're paying 5 or 6 times what you should be to get a container on a ship,
Right.
I think that those costs concern me most of all.
Right.
Keeping rental costs where if the prices of student line trumpets triple suddenly, that's going to be an issue.
Yeah. Well, and they've already gone up so much, which is amazing considering how they're not made here anymore. But certainly in my career, the price has just exploded, and the cost the manufacturing cost has to have come down as it's been moved overseas. Yeah. But we haven't seen price reductions on our end. We just see the prices continue to rise. And now you're seeing retail prices for instruments made in China, trumpet made in China that's going to retail at $1,200 or whatever, which to me just seems kind of awfully expensive for a student trumpet.
Yeah. And excuse me, sorry about that. The repair shop is on the other side of the wall and we're doing a little test playing right now.
I thought maybe you had indigestion or something. So
we've been really good. They were doing some estimates, but apparently they're back now and back doing some repairs. So sorry about that.
It's totally fine. I've had the same thing happen to me. So what's the future for Kidder Music then long term? What's going to happen when you're ready to retire? Do you have, is there the next generation that's going to take it over? We haven't, so don't know what's going to happen then.
Don't know. I'll just curl up and die under the desk. So just go back to starting where I started, under the desk. I don't know. I don't have a plan. I don't have anyone in place currently at the store that would be at that level. And so I don't know, sell or close. That's the way it looks right now. I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. So I hit the big 5-0 last year. So I've got a few good years left in me. My mom, she had a decade birthday this year. Both of my parents did. We won't mention which one, but they're still going strong. So work ethic on both sides of my genes worked strong. Well into their 80s and 90s. So
right.
I don't know that I want to go quite that long, but we'll see. I've got some great friends that have stores in the area that we may come to an agreement or it may be it, the second generation is doomed anyway, right?
But you've made it. So
we have.
Yeah.
Knock on wood.
That's awesome.
But so far so good. But no, I don't. And that is a concern that, it doesn't weigh on me, but I would feel better if there were some plans in place.
We took over operations for a competitor here. We've actually 2 in the last few years, but one in particular in Springfield that had been in business for over 100 years, multi-generational family business, and well-liked and well-regarded. But the generation that was running it current, up until its close, just didn't have the love for it that maybe his parents and grandparents and great-grandparents had. And an opportunity came to do something different. They owned their building. They were able to sell the building. And so he decided to take it, and which, kudos to him for doing that. We always had a good relationship with him. So when he made that decision, he reached out to us, and we were able to work out something that was mutually beneficial to both of us. And we were able to bring on their customers and satisfy a lot of those people. And he was able to go on and do his next adventure, and it's fine. It's totally fine. That place is kind of an institution in the Springfield area. I mean, be around for over 100 years. That's certainly a something that tends to stay in the lore of a community. But it's okay. Things move on, and
Yeah.
things don't have to survive in order to be worthwhile, you know?
No, but the family, the family part of that, you want it to,
Yeah,
because
sure.
it's part of your heritage. You want it to, but that's not always in the cards. And once like you said, it's not the end
It's
of the
fine.
world.
It's fine. Yeah. And when we bought Ernie Williamson music, we bought it from Ernie's daughter, Lois. And, of course I'm probably biased, but I feel like we've been great for that business. We've helped to grow it and reinvigorate it again and make it fresh and do things with it that they would have done. And the Williamson family wasn't interested in owning it or running it. And when we bought it from her, she was almost 80. So it was time, and it's been a wonderful thing for everybody. We've kept the name, mainly because, the parent company being Springfield Music, we tried this once, but having Springfield Music in places not called Springfield don't make a lot of sense. I had someone talk me into calling our store in Kansas City Springfield Music. We did that for a couple of years. I'm like, this makes no sense. Like, I'm changing the name. It doesn't make any sense. I wish we had a more a proper name, like Kidder Music. That I'm like, well, I can put that anywhere. It's fine. But at this point, I think we're kind of stuck with what we've got. So tell me about a negative situation you've experienced in your business career that ultimately had a positive effect, but you wouldn't want to repeat it again.
Well, it's hard to think of anything past COVID right right now.
Have there been positive effects from COVID for you?
I think so. Maybe hard to see right now, but I think our operations are leaner and meaner, and we've in looking where we could cut corners. I think they were corners that could have been cut, but never needed to. And yeah. I don't want that to sound like, like we're wasting money or not looking at, but there were expenses that, but if we can shave $100 a month with a new cell phone plan for the cell phones, or if we can shave money here and, here or there and make it a little bit meaner looking, whether it's different products, using different papers, doing different maintenance contracts on our copiers and printers, or, whatever the case may be. But I think that's probably a practice. You look at that with insurance or vehicles, your big ticket items, mm-hmm. But it's those little $400 or $500 or $1,000 a month expenses that slowly creep up and creep up and creep up that you don't revisit as often as you should.
Right.
And so I think that was a benefit, and we will continue to do that, or shall we say, keep a closer eye on that. Doing some more cross training, I think, is going to continue to benefit us moving forward. The fact that we had to do that during the pandemic, I think we've always cross trained, but you cross train, but then you don't really use it.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I know how to UPS stuff, but the warehouse does that. I don't, I know how to do it, but do I ever do it? No.
Right.
And so actually doing some of those other duties that you have trained your staff to do, I think is going to benefit us going forward as well.
Yeah.
And understanding what it is that your coworkers do. It's a good practice. We should continue to do it, switch. Okay, you do this today and you do this today, but you know how it is. You never do that.
Yeah. It's easy to get into your routine. Yeah, I understand. So if you could send a message to a younger you, what would you say?
I would say what I'm doing right now: pause and breathe before speaking.
No, that's not as fun. That's not as fun.
Or reacting, I should say. The kidder side sometimes has a quick switch. So that would be one thing. Patience also does not run long in our gene pool. So I would say be more patient. both with myself, but mostly with others. Mostly with others. I still struggle with that, I would say. But I feel like I'm getting better, or at least I'm censoring my thoughts better.
It's so hard to be patient, and it's almost impossible to be patient with yourself, right? Like
Well,
that is such a difficult thing to do.
sometimes, and you probably don't know this, but sometimes life throws you things that you can't control. You know, it'll be almost 2 years ago that my husband had a stroke, and that forces you to do a lot of things differently.
Yeah.
And to look at, not only just look at things differently, but it forces you to be patient, or you're going to go crazy.
Right.
And it forces you to do a lot of things that you're not accustomed to doing. And so I think, you know, while I don't wish that upon anyone, nor do I, you know, I certainly wish that it hadn't happened to us, but it changes you forever.
Yeah.
It changes you forever. You know, that's why I won't be in Nashville for a week. You know, can't be gone that long. And that's okay.
Right.
And that's okay. But things are different now, and there's different priorities and different responsibilities. So balance. Never been real good with balance, but still that's something that I am working on currently, to try and be more balanced, both for inner me and company me and home me, to try and find more balance and be more balanced.
You get to that time of your life where that's necessary. And I think when you're younger, balance isn't as necessary, especially in terms of balance over the course of a day or a week. You know, you're better off to put the time and energy into building your career, building your knowledge and stuff like that. But then later in your life, you kind of get to that point where I think balance is a more achievable goal, especially in shorter time periods, days and weeks, even and certainly months, but certainly an important consideration, I think, for us all.